Hello everyone, my name is Javier Gomez, member of the UDS technical team, and in this video we're going to see how to configure a Linux service to give applications to users in UDS Enterprise. So the first thing that we're going to need is a Linux machine template that was configured in a previous video. Also, this machine will have two applications, FreeOffice and GIMP, and we will configure both of them. Also, in this video, we are going to need and ready UDS Enterprise Platform, and right now we're going to enter it. So let's put it IP or DNS name here, as you can see. And in our case, we are going to access with the super user. Okay, so now in the dashboard, we'll click on it, and let's start putting the services we need. The first one will be the service provider. As you can see, in our case, it's going to be a VMware Platform vSphere. So let's click on New, and let's click VMware vCenter. Let's put a new name, VMware in this case. The IP direction of our VMware vCenter is going to be 03. The part, in this case, is going to be by default, and the username that has the required permissions to create machines and destroy the machines. For the password also. Okay, great. Let's click on the advanced tab. You can see we're going to leave it by default. Let's click on test, and the test passed successfully, so we can save it. Now we have our service provider created. So now we create our first service, our first base service. Let's click inside. We'll click on new. In our case, it's going to be a linked clone, because when we want to create a Linux service, we will need to generate new machines. So in this case, it will be a linked clone. Let's click on it. Great, so let's define a new name. It will be Linux vApps. Let's select that the data center where we want to store it, and where do we want to have our publication template. It's going to be in publications. Great. And the data stores where we want to have these publications. If you choose both, the hypervisor will be the one to choose the one that has more free space. Now let's go to the machine tab. Here will be the template machine that we're going to need. Let's see where it is allocated, here in templates in my case. And the final machine, that is Ubuntu for apps. Here we go. The memory that we're going to want for the machine, let's put 1 gig of RAM, our network. Then we'll have our data store where we want our machines to be allocated. The hypervisor will be the one to choose the one that has more free space. The name of these machines, in my case, is going to be Linux vApps. And 3 characters for our names. So we can click on save. Okay, once we have it created, let's go to the Authenticators. So let's click on new to create a new authenticator. In our case, we're going to use an internal database. Let's create a new name, a label, and save. Great. So once we have it created, the first thing we're going to do is create a group and a user. The first thing, let's go with the group. So let's click on new. Let's give it a name. It's going to be users. Very easy name. And let's go to create a new user. It's going to be user 01. Enabled, of course. It's going to be a user, and let's give it a password. And we'll tell him that he is in the users group. Okay, so once that is configured, let's go with the OS manager. In the OS manager, we're going to need a Linux OS manager. Let's put it a name. Okay, Linux OS manager. And we want to tell him what's going to happen when it finishes. In our case, in the example, we're going to move the remove service on a persistent machine. When the user does a logout, that machine will be destroyed. When we create one of these services, we have to put a time when the machine is not going to be used, for example 300 seconds, so that machine can be destroyed automatically. So once this is configured, let's go with the transports. This is going to be the most important part for Linux applications, because here in the X2Go transport will be the one to extract the application, the session, and give it to the users. So we're going to do more than one example so you can see every way that we want. We'll do one direct one and one tunnel. So let's start with the direct connections. X2Go. Let's give it a name. X2Go. And for this, transport will be for the free office one. Writer. Okay, great. Let's give it a priority of 1. And the credential part will be the username of that machine. And the parameters, we'll tell them the resolution that we want. Will be full screen. And on desktop, we'll click UDS vApps. Now here in the path, we'll put the path of our application. So it will be USR bin LibreOffice in my case. So as you only want the writer, we'll tell them, because in our case we only want to show the user the writer application. We can tell them if it's needed. It's not going to be needed for this case if we wanted the sound to be enabled, but for our case you can leave it by default. In the advanced tab, let's tell them the keyboard I'm going to use. In my case, it's going to be a Spanish keyboard, and everything else could be left by default. Let's click on save, and it's ready. Now we have our direct transport totally configured. Now let's go with the tunnel 1. Let's tell them the name. X2Go on the name. But in this case, it's going to be a tunnel part for the game application. Let's give you a priority. In this case, it's going to be 2. And in the tunnel part, we'll put the IP or host name of the tunnel. In our case, we're going to be the IP .51. In my case, the local IP. Okay, so once we have, let's put the port, can't forget 443. It's by default. Once we have the tunnel configured, let's go for the credentials. And the same as before, we'll tell them the username of that machine. In the parameter section, let's go with full screen also. And desktop, we'll check UDS vApps. The path of our application, can't forget it. USR bin gim, and that will be ready. Everything else can be left by default, but our keyword that will tell them is going to be Spanish one, and we'll click on save. And ready. Now we have our 2 transports. Then we'll go to our pool section and create the service pools. In this example, we're going to create 2. Will be one service with 2 different transports, or individual machines with only 1 service each. I'll show you right now. The first one, let's give it a name. Let's put vApps Linux, for example. The base service we created before. It's going to be Linux vApps, and the OS manager that we created before also. In the display part, you can tell it the group of or the image. This case will be by default. The advanced tab will be by default. And the ability tab, let's tell them how many machines. Let's tell them that we want 2 machines in level 1 cache, and we have a maximum of 5 machines. In our platform, we will have 2 machines and level 1 cache. Let's create. Now it will start creating the publication. As we can see in our VMware, we want it to be in the publication tab, so it's starting to be created. Let's give it a second for this machine to be created. So once this is created, let's get inside the service pool and tell them the groups and the users and the transports. First we will be the groups, the internal database we created before, users, and the transports that we want for the service. Let's add our writer and our GIMP, our tunneled GIMP. Great. The publication, let's just wait for the publication to be created. So as you can see right here, we're going to be started. The machine will be creating. Let's give it a second. Okay, so now as you can see, we have both machines in a valid state, and the application is already created. So now let's access with the user to see what he has in his portal. User 01 and his password. Great. And as you can see, he will have his service. His service will have 2 transports, each one for each application that he has. One for the writer and one for tunnel GIMP. Let's see how it will go with the writer. We'll click on it. Our UDS client will open, and now our applications will be prepared and ready to use. As you can see, here it is. You can type everything you want and totally prepared. Let's close it. Don't save. Great. Ready. So the next part will be using the tunnel connection for our GIMP. We'll open our client also. And as you can see, very fast, we have our GIMP application totally functional and ready to use. So now let's close it. I'm ready. Now let's see a different method to create these Linux applications. Another way of creating these Linux applications will be by publishing different services to individual applications. So we will have 2 different services. Let's go in our service provider. We will have 2 different VMware services. For Authenticators and NOS Manager will be the same configuration. In the transports, it will be the same transports, but we will only have 1 transport to each service. In our case, as you can see, we have 2, our writer and our GIMP. And in our service pools, we can see that we have 3 different publications. One service will be for our GIMP. In this case, it will only have a tunnel connection. And one writer that his only transport will be for direct connections. As you can see, these machines are valid and in a valid state, are ready to be used. And now we can get into our user mode and see how the user will watch this. We'll access with user 01. And as you can see, the user will have an individual service for a GIMP. Oh, the other option that we had will be 1 service have 2 transports. In the case that the user clicks on GIMP As he only has one transport, he won't have to choose. The application won't open automatically. And as you can see, same as before, his GIMP is ready to be used. It will be the same for our writer. Our client will open and the application will start. Okay, here we have it. So now we have our Linux applications ready for our users. And these are the two forms that we have to create these applications. I hope this video can help you. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.